before I ever saw the lighthouse, I heard the rules. They came in a letter sealed with wax, with no return address and no greeting, just 13 commandments typed on yellowing paper, as if from a dying machine. I read them once, then again. Each line was stranger than the last, but one thing was clear. These weren't suggestions. They were survival instructions. I didn't believe them, of course, not then. But by my third night on Gull Rock Island, I knew better. Because the lighthouse doesn't just watch the sea. It watches you. The wind came in low and cold off the Atlantic as I stepped off the rusted ferry, the last one of the season, and onto the cracked stone pier of Gull Rock Island. A speck of rock, lashed by water and barely large enough to hold the aging lighthouse that would become my workplace, prison, and confessional for the next 6 months. I'd taken the job out of desperation, not curiosity. The posting had been brief. Night watch keeper needed. Isolated duty. Must follow all instructions. Good pay. No questions. Something about it drew me in. A kind of eerie clarity that said, there will be no illusions here, only rules. The boatman, a wordless man with eyes that seemed too tired for his age, handed me a canvas duffel with my name scrawled across it in bold black letters. Don't leave the light off. Don't let them talk to you. Don't go to the second basement. He muttered without looking me in the eye, then pushed away from the dock as though he feared it would cling to him. With the groan of wood and the slap of salt water, I was alone. Gull Rock Lighthouse stood like a crooked tooth on the edge of the cliffs, tall and bone-white, its lantern eye half-lidded under the stormy dusk. I could already hear it, the low humming throb of the rotating light, as if it were breathing. A short footpath led up to the door, flanked on both sides by bare scrub and a warped fence. And beyond that, the ocean stretched into the grayness of forever. I took a breath, then another, and made my way to the tower. The key had been mailed. To me weeks before, sealed in wax, accompanied by a single sheet of paper with the night rules printed in typewriter font. I'd read them more times than I cared to admit. 1. Turn on the light by 6:45 p.m. No exceptions. 2. Never answer the door after midnight. 3. Do not look directly at the mirror in the Fresnel chamber. 4. Every Friday, leave a cup of seawater. On the third stair down. 5. Avoid room 2B. If you hear footsteps from inside, report it in the log and leave the building. The list went on, each rule stranger than the last, culminating with 13. Never break a rule. Not even once. I thought it was some elaborate hazing. Lonely men playing games with new hires to stave off boredom. I would learn better soon enough. The interior of the lighthouse was worn but clean. A strange combination of old Navy neatness and coastal decay. My predecessor's things were gone, though I found a few items left behind. A book of matches, a Polaroid photo of a boat I couldn't identify, and a crumpled page torn from a journal, which read simply, "The mirror showed her again. She had my face this time." I placed it gently in the small desk drawer and shut it. My living quarters were on the second level. A modest room with a cot, a desk, a single round porthole, and a strange stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like a compass rose. There was no internet, no cell service, no TV, just a landline, with a direct connection to the Coast Guard and a yellowed binder labeled, "Log, do not falsify." That night, my first night, came fast and deep. By 6:30, the sky was so dark it looked punched through with nails, and I climbed the tight, groaning stairs to the lantern room where the great Fresnel lens sat like a glass cathedral. The machinery was half-automated now, but required manual. Confirmation each night. A switch flipped, a dial turned, a button pressed. At 6:44, I turned the light on. The beam leapt out across the sea like a blade, slicing into the fog, rotating on its ancient track. For a moment, I felt powerful, like some deity of light and shadow. At 12:06 a.m., the first knock came. It was soft, So soft I thought I'd imagined it. But then came another, and another, not insistent, just rhythmic, patient. I sat frozen, in my chair, staring at the door that faced the ocean, where no boat had landed, where no path led. I remembered Rule 2. Never answer the door after midnight. So I sat, and the knocking continued for 7 minutes, then stopped. I wrote it down in the log. The second night, I heard weeping on the stairs. A woman's voice, low and confused. I didn't investigate. I didn't want to. But I left the cup of seawater on the stair on Friday like I was told. The third night, I saw something, standing far out on the rocks, just at the edge of the light's reach. It stood still for 2 hours. At 3:14 a.m., it turned and walked into the sea. I could hear the slosh of its footsteps even though the windows were sealed. By the end of the first week, I no longer questioned the rules. They weren't suggestions. They weren't folklore. They were survival. My world narrowed to meals, reports, sleep, and the endless rhythm of keeping the light alive and obeying the code. I never saw another person, never heard a boat, yet the log had fresh entries every morning in a different handwriting, warnings, fragments, sometimes just a smudge of salt and ink. One note read, "She is not what she appears. She wears your memory." Another, "If you forget why you're here, she'll remind you. Then you'll wish you hadn't asked." I stopped opening doors that weren't mine. One night, I found room 2B unlocked. I closed it, fast. I left my cup. I followed the rules. But something inside the room whispered my name anyway. Gull Rock was changing me, slowly like a tide over stone. And the mirror in the lantern room, I never looked, not even once. Because sometimes I felt it looking back. Some things at the lighthouse don't move, but they change. Some doors stay closed, yet something breathes behind them. The light spins to keep the dark away, but not everything fears it. And the mirror in the lantern room remembers faces that were never yours. It was the 12th night when the mirror called to me. That's how I think of it now. Not a literal voice, but a pull. A flicker at the edge of the lantern room where the big Fresnel lens rotated like a sleeping eye, sweeping. Beams across the black Atlantic. I'd followed every rule with a disciple's fear. Light on before 6:45, door locked, seawater placed, room 2B left untouched. Yet that night something was different. The light clicked on without resistance, the gears turning smooth for the first time since my arrival, as though the tower itself approved. And that was the first warning. The lighthouse doesn't offer kindness. If it makes something easier, it's because it wants something in return. The mirror sat across from. The controls, round and foggy, bolted into the wall like an afterthought. I had ignored it completely until that moment, remembering Rule 3 with a religious fervor. Do not look directly at the mirror in the Fresnel chamber, but that night, out of the corner of my eye, I saw motion. Not a reflection, movement. A silhouette. Behind me, tall, thin, too still to be human. I spun around, nothing. But in the mirror, the shape still lingered. No features, no face. Just a long, pale blur, like a smudge across film. I shut my eyes tight and faced the wall, heart hammering, breath short and sharp. I knew what the log said. Others had seen it. Some described a woman, some a child, some those who had disappeared, I assumed. Never got to write anything at all. I counted to 30 before opening my eyes, refusing to look back toward the glass. From the stairs below, the sound of footsteps began. Too slow to be normal. Like someone, deliberately pressing heel to wood, testing each one for weakness. I checked the clock. 12:01. I knew what that meant. Rule 2. Never answer the door after midnight. But no one said anything about footsteps. I held still, thinking maybe, just maybe, It was just the creaks of an old building expanding in the cool night. But then the footsteps stopped right beneath. Me? Floor 4? My floor! The silence stretched. I didn't move. Then a whisper came. Not from the stairs, but from behind me, inside the lantern room. "You saw me." The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was worse than that. It was familiar. It sounded like my sister. But my sister drowned in a river 17 years ago. I stood paralyzed, every rule screaming through my head like a siren. I wanted to run, to flee the room. But if I ran, I'd pass the mirror again. I didn't trust myself not to look. So I crouched by the switch panel, hands trembling, and waited for the light to make another full rotation. When it did, I caught a brief glimpse in the glass of the window, 2 shapes, me, and something behind me, grinning with teeth too wide. I shut my eyes again. That night, I slept in the stairwell, sitting upright with a flare gun in my lap. The flare gun was against protocol. It was for emergencies only, but I was long past pretending this wasn't one. In the morning, when the sun finally reached Gull Rock, I forced myself back to the top floor. The lantern room smelled of salt and something else. Cinders. Burnt hair. I checked the mirror. It was blank. My own reflection stared back at me. Only, it didn't blink when I did. I shut the panel, dropped the protective cover over the mirror, and wrote a full page in the log. Saw her again, heard my sister's voice, reflection lagging behind, smell of burnt air, possible breach of Rule 3, no direct eye contact. I tried to keep it clinical, like that would make it less real. It didn't. Later that afternoon, during my supply check, I noticed something even more unsettling. My personal logbook, the one I'd brought with me, was missing 4 pages, torn out cleanly. I found one of them in the trash, soaked in seawater. I hadn't gone near the ocean in days. That night, I hesitated before turning on the light. I stood at the control panel at 6:42 p.m., fingers hovering. My mind kept circling one thought. What happens if I break a rule? Just one. Maybe the rules were some kind of psychological conditioning, I reasoned. Old lighthouse lore, meant to keep us alert, obedient, afraid. But as soon as the minute hand ticked to 6:45, the entire tower shuddered. The mirror cracked down the middle, not shattered, just a single hairline fracture that ran through the glass like a vein. I flipped the switch. The light flared back to life. Beam sweeping out across the darkening sea. Below me, from somewhere in the stone beneath the lighthouse, I heard a long, drawn-out moan, like something had been briefly let out, then forced back in. The next 3 nights were quiet, almost eerily so. No footsteps, no whispers, no knocking. I thought maybe the tower was giving me a break, or watching, testing. The quiet was worse somehow because it gave me room to think. About the rules, about the mirror, about how much of me was still mine. Then, on the 15th night, I found the photo. It had been slid under my door sometime during the day. A Polaroid. Old. Faded. It showed me standing in the lantern room. Same clothes, same expression. But there was one detail that made my stomach seize. In the photo, I was looking directly into the mirror, and the thing in the mirror was not me. Its face was twisted into a wide, lipless grin. Its eyes were white, and its hands were on my shoulders. I checked the timestamp on the back. Taken, night 12. That was the night I'd heard my sister's voice. That was the night I thought I hadn't looked. I burned the photo in the stove. The flames went green for a moment, then out. Smoke curled up the chimney like fingers. The logbook was missing again the next morning, open to a page I hadn't written, dated 1 year in the future. It read, "You looked again. This time, she didn't leave." I slammed the book shut, locked the lantern room, and started sleeping in the supply closet, surrounded by iron tools, salt bags, and a hammer under my pillow. I refused to be another ghost in this place, but the rules had started to change. I noticed it on night 20. Rule 7 had been rewritten. Originally, it said, "If you hear weeping below the 3rd floor, do not investigate." Now it read, "If you hear weeping below the 3rd floor, tell her you're sorry." Someone or something was editing them. Worse still, Rule 13, now, had a postscript. "You already broke one. Prepare." I stood there staring at the page, my breath fogging, a low howl of wind shaking the tower. But I knew it wasn't just wind. There was something else circling the lighthouse now. Something that didn't care about beams or warnings or rules. Something that had seen me see it. The mirror's crack had widened. I hadn't touched it, hadn't looked, but I could feel it spreading, like the tower itself was infected. That night, I nailed a heavy canvas over the mirror. The next morning, it was gone, folded neatly at the foot of my bed, damp with seawater. The mirror, clean, whole, as if it had never cracked at all. I checked the logbook. Someone had written, "It likes to be seen." I began to count the days differently now, not in numbers, but in quiet. A quiet day meant I had survived another rotation without slipping, without becoming one of them. A noisy night meant someone or something was testing the boundary. I had a dream where I was looking into the mirror and it was behind me again, but this time it was smiling with my face. And in the dream, I smiled back. When I woke up, my reflection in the porthole didn't move for 3 seconds after I did. I took the flare gun to the mirror. I screamed. I fired. The flare went out instantly. No fire, no sound, just vanished into the glass like it had been swallowed. No mark, no scorch, just my face again. Only now, my eyes were bleeding in the reflection. That's when I finally understood. The mirror doesn't show the past or the future. It shows possession, slowly, patiently, one reflection at a time. And I had already started to become hers. There is a door in the lighthouse that breathes. Its hinges never rust, its lock never fails until it wants to. The rules say stay away, but rules are written for minds that remain whole. And when the whispering starts, no one walks past room 2B unchanged. It was on the 23rd night that the door to room 2B opened on its own. And when I say opened, I don't mean it creaked or drifted or swung lightly like a door left unlatched. I mean it unlocked itself with a sound like teeth, grinding and slowly pulled inward, revealing a darkness so complete it felt thick, like the room was filled with ink instead of air. The smell was the first thing that hit me, not rot, not mildew, but something sharper, wet iron like blood in seawater, fresh and ancient all at once. I had never approached the door before. Rule 5 was clear. Avoid room 2B if you hear footsteps. From inside, report it in the log and leave the building. But this was worse. No footsteps, just silence and an open invitation. The hallway was colder there, unnaturally so, and I could see my breath even though the rest of the lighthouse was warm. I stood at the threshold for longer than I should, holding the flare gun in one hand and a crowbar in the other, both useless in ways I couldn't yet articulate. I could have shut the door. I should have shut it. But the voice came. It didn't call my name. It called my thoughts. You want to know why you're really here? It was my voice saying it, but not from my mouth. The echo came from the darkness in front of me, shaped in a way that knew everything I'd ever regretted. I stepped in, 1 foot only. The floor of room 2B was wrong. Not wood, not stone, something softer, spongy, like walking on old carpet soaked through with water. I pointed the light in and saw nothing. The beam was swallowed whole. The room had no furniture, no walls, no ceiling. It was as if the room had grown larger than the building, a pocket of space pulled away from reality. I took another step. In and the door behind me slammed shut. I spun around, heart pounding, and reached for the knob. Gone. It was flat wall now, seamless, no exit. I backed up, stumbled, and that's when I heard it. The breathing. Not mine, not human. Long, slow inhalations from every direction, like something immense was asleep just below my feet, or pretending to be. In the middle of the room, a light flickered on. Not mine, not electrical, just a small square of glow hovering in the air. A projector screen of sorts hanging in the void, and on it, footage played. Grainy, static-lined, me arriving at the island. But something was wrong. My eyes were too wide, my face too still. I wasn't blinking, and the me on the screen smiled. Not like I smile, like someone wearing me was trying to learn how. The footage changed. Now it showed the lantern room. The mirror, my body standing in front of it. Again that eerie stillness, and the reflection wasn't mirroring. It waved when I didn't. It grinned when I cried. And behind me, in the reflection, room 2B's door was wide open, something crawling out of it backwards like a spider made of smoke and voices. I screamed, not out loud, internally, at a level where even sound couldn't reach. The projector flickered, the image twisted. I saw my family. My father staring at a blank TV, my sister walking into the river again, over and over. I saw the man I replaced, the former night keeper. His eyes were stitched shut in the footage. He was writing something in the log. Blood. Leaking from his nose, then nothing. The screen cut to black. A voice, low, guttural, whispered behind my ear. "You broke the mirror, so it opened the door." I turned around and saw myself, but not quite. My double was taller, thinner, bones sharper under skin that looked like it had been boiled. Its eyes were mirrors. Its mouth was open too wide. It held out its hand, palm up, and in it was a rule I had never seen. Rule 14. Do not feed the thing that wears your name. I backed away, stumbled over something soft. A pile of books. No, not books. Faces. Human faces, skinned and flattened like pages. Blank eyes open, all staring at the mirror version of me. I ran. I didn't think. I just ran. Into the dark, deeper, away from the screen, away from the breathing, away from the reflection. And just when I thought I would fall forever, I hit a door. Wood. Cold brass knob. I yanked it open without thinking and spilled into the hallway outside room 2B, the real hallway, the one with familiar creaks and old storm maps on the wall. Behind me, the door hissed shut. Locked. The smell was gone. My legs collapsed. I crawled to the stairwell and vomited salt water. My watch read 1:07 a.m. I'd been inside for over an hour. I didn't write it all down in the log. Just a line. Entered 2B. Saw self. Door shut. Don't go back. But when I checked the log again the next morning, someone had crossed it out, and underneath in slanted black ink was written, "You always go back. You never learn." For the next several days, I barricaded the hallway to room 2B with furniture, nails, salt lines. I stopped sleeping more than 20 minutes at a time. The mirror's crack had returned, deeper, spreading now like a web. My reflection had stopped mimicking me entirely. It just watched, sometimes mouthing things I couldn't hear. Once, it placed its hand on the glass. The real glass, not in the reflection. My side. A palm print remained for hours, steaming cold. The telephone rang on the 28th night. It wasn't supposed to. Only emergency use. It hadn't rung since I arrived. I let it go to voicemail. There is no voicemail on that line. It rang again. I answered. Silence. Then, "Did you look?" The voice wasn't human. It was layered like three people talking at once. Then a second voice, much clearer. "Get out of the lighthouse, run. You're not the first. You're not even the real you anymore." I yanked the cord out of the wall. The line kept ringing. I left it off the hook and tried to sleep with the flare gun across my chest and a crucifix I hadn't worn in years clenched in my fist. I dreamed of the sea swallowing the lighthouse, but the building stood. Only I sank. Room 2B returned the next night. Not physically, but in my dreams. The projector showed new footage. Me walking out of the lighthouse, a truck waiting at the end of the pier. But when I looked inside, the truck was empty. I watched myself peel off my face like a wet towel and place it on the passenger seat, then drive away. I woke screaming. The hallway to room 2B was open again. Barricade gone. No trace. The door ajar. From inside, I heard something I will never forget. A voice. My voice. Repeating over and over, "I'm still in here." That's when I knew the truth. Room 2B isn't a place. It's a doorway, a copy machine, a vault. And I had left part of myself behind. A memory, a soul, a scream that would never stop echoing inside that room. The next day, the rules changed again. Rule 5 was gone entirely. In its place, "Let her out. She's waited long enough." I scratched it out in red ink, wrote "no" in all caps. That night, someone knocked on the door at 12:03 a.m. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't move. Then a voice. "I'm you. Let me back in." I pressed my hands to my ears, shut my eyes, and whispered every rule over and over like a prayer. Outside, the sea howled louder. The lighthouse groaned, and the door began to turn. The lighthouse doesn't need light to see. It remembers every keeper, every scream, every broken rule. When the mirror cracks, it opens a door. When the door opens, it lets in the sea. And the final rule is one you only learn too late. It happened. On the 39th night, exactly 13 full rotations of the lighthouse beam since I first saw the mirrors crack, that the rules stopped working altogether, not by failing, but by rewriting themselves entirely, replacing the logbook, entries with looping black ink and margins filled with words I didn't write. I woke up on the floor of the supply room, salt crusted in my hair, one boot missing, and a line of bloody footprints leading from room 2B all the way up to the lantern room. I didn't remember walking, but my feet were cut and raw. I followed, the trail slow and shaking, and as I ascended, I realized the tower was smaller, each floor compressed, ceilings lower, air tighter, like the lighthouse had begun folding in on itself, spiraling inward, devouring its own space. When I reached the top, the mirror was no longer just a fixture. It was a gateway, pulsing like a wound, black vein-like cracks webbing outward through the lens housing, across the steel supports, even into the walls. The light was still spinning, but weak, dimmer than it should be, like the tower itself was growing tired. And there, standing in the center of the chamber, was me. Again the double, but this time not hiding in the glass. Fully present, breathing, smiling that same slow predator's smile. It wore my face like a glove and opened its arms. "You lasted longer than the others," it said in my voice. "But the lighthouse only ever lets one keeper leave. The other stays behind, as part of the rules." I tried to raise the flare gun. It clicked, empty. I tried to run. The door slammed. Shut. Then I realized what was wrong. The rules weren't guidelines for survival. They were rituals, sacrifices designed to maintain the balance. One keeper outside, one inside, always. Every broken rule loosened the lock. Every glance into the mirror made the double more real. And I had done it all, broken enough of them to finish the cycle. "Why me?" I whispered. The thing wearing me tilted its head. "Because you believed them." Behind it, the mirror opened, not shattered, not cracked, opened, like a pupil dilating in a great black eye, and from it came the cold, Not just in temperature, but a cold of removal, like the absence of memory, of self, of name. My legs gave, out. The double crouched beside me, touched my face. "It's okay," it said. "You'll keep the light spinning. I'll go write the new rules." I screamed as it leaned forward, and as its mouth passed mine, the mirror flashed once, and I saw every keeper before me, faces twisted in horror, stitched into the walls of room 2B, reflections burned into glass, voices lost in phone static and ocean wind. One of them mouthed the final line. "Rule 0. The lighthouse only ends when you forget who you were." The light went out. For 1 second, one full rotation, darkness reclaimed the tower. And in that moment, I felt myself fall backward, not down the stairs, but through the mirror, through time, through layers of the lighthouse I had never seen. I awoke on the first floor, in a fresh uniform, no wounds. The sun was rising. A supply boat horn echoed across the waves. And beside me, on the desk, was a new rule book, clean, crisp, titled Instructions for the Next Night Keeper. There were only 12 rules listed. The 13th was missing. My hand moved on its own, opened the log, began to write. Day 1. Weather clear. Rotation initiated. Behind me, the mirror in the window showed a man sitting at the desk. His face looked calm, but he didn't blink. He didn't move. And when I turned around, there was no one there. Just my own reflection, smiling back at me. The mirror didn't close. That was the first sign that something had gone wrong, or perhaps exactly right. It remained open, shimmering like oil under moonlight, its surface no longer reflecting anything, just pulsing like a heartbeat in sync with the tower's creaking walls. I had written in the log, yes. I had obeyed the cycle, played my part. But something inside me hadn't let go. A thread remained, thin, frayed, but real. I stood up. My body was stiff, not old, not broken, repurposed. The lighthouse accepted me, but not fully. I could feel it judging, weighing. And deeper still, below the floorboards, something stirred. Something that had been waiting for a keeper who remembered. The lights flickered. I turned toward the stairs and began descending. Not because I chose to, but because the lighthouse wanted me to. Each step downward echoed like a drum beat, the shadows thickening, the spiral tighter. And then I saw it. A new door. One that hadn't been there before. Room 0, no handle. Just a keyhole shaped like an eye, a whisper in my pocket. I reached in and pulled out a rusted key I didn't remember taking. The moment the key entered the lock, the air changed. The hallway behind me sealed shut, the walls growing together like flesh closing over a wound. I turned the key. The door opened inward, revealing nothing. No room, no floor, just stars. Ocean. The bones of lighthouses spiraling into forever, a sky without time, and hanging in the middle of it all was the mirror. Not the cracked one, the original. In it, I saw all possible versions of myself, some screaming, some smiling, some already consumed. One was still entering the lighthouse, another was still drowning, and one, just one, had walked away. That one looked up at me and whispered, "It's not too late." I stepped through, and the door closed, and the lighthouse turned again. But this time, the beam spun in reverse, and somewhere far above, the stars blinked, like eyes opening. If you think the story ends here, think again. Some horrors don't fade when the screen goes dark, they just begin.